Welcome to Look News, Gordon. We appreciate you being here.
Thank you for inviting me.
It's great to have you here. The age-old question, the Beatles or the Rolling Stones? You're obviously a Beatles guy, but it's not that simple a question, right?
Never that simple. I mean, when I was back in the day, I think I got excited about this music through the Beatles, but then the Rolling Stones became equally important for me. It all kind of matters on who you are, how old you were, and what your interests were.
Talk to me about your love of the Beatles, because this goes way back to the days when, that first appearance on the Ed Sullivan Show.
Yeah.
But talk to me about this lifelong love for this band, this British band.
Well, that's actually kind of funny, because in some ways it hasn't always been a lifelong love. It was something I got into. I listened to the Beatles certainly back in the day, appreciated their music, thought they were great. I remember going to a friend's house every time they got a new album release. He'd have the album. He's one of these kids that always had the album out. And we'd sit and listen. I was certainly impressed with them. But as a musician, which I was too, it was more fun often to play the kind of R&B stuff that the Rolling Stones were doing. And I grew up on the Canadian side of the border, but right near Detroit. And so there was a lot of R&B in that area. So the Rolling Stones were really kind of a better fit in many ways for that area than the Beatles. And my interest in the Beatles kind of waned for many years. And it wasn't until I got to Skidmore and I started having students kind of got word that I would listen to this stuff and was happy talking about it. And they started bringing me recordings. They would want to come and talk. And they'd say, and then somebody said, why can't we do a course on this? And I said, well, I don't know. Let's try one. So at that point, I started just doing more material research on the Beatles and on British pop and rock in general. And somehow I became a Beatles expert. It just kind of happens.
Falls into place.
Falls into place.
You've been teaching a seminar on this since the late 90s at Skidmore College. Talk to me about that class. You think about college and you think about these classes that you're taking, and this seems an interesting class, don't get me wrong, but one that perhaps would not help you in future endeavors. Talk to me about this class, though. Am I wrong?
Well, here's the way that course actually worked. Students saw it as taking a course on the Beatles. But what they actually ended up doing was a course in comparative biographies. Because what I did was I set up, okay, we would take 5 biographies or maybe 6 biographies, because there's so many books written on the Beatles. And set up these 5 or 6 biographies, and I would say, okay, I would set up a series of topics. And for the seminar, I'd divide the seminar into groups, and I'd say, okay, group 1, compare what these different biographies say about John Lennon's mother, right, or about the composition of Strawberry Fields Forever. And so you'd go around, that team would then all work on that particular topic and see, okay, this biographer says this. And biographers will write different things. Obviously biographers come to it with different backgrounds and different skills and different interests. And what it would end up doing is seeing how different biographers covered the same topic. And the same thing when we did some music analysis in that class too. You'd see how different people had analyzed the music. And music theorists, music analysis, different people will come at it and see different kinds of things.
There's been no other band that has had so many books written about them. So many people pick apart their music and dissect it and really look at it. Why the Beatles? Why is there so much information about the Beatles, and why has there been so much interest in this group of British lads?
It's all about chance, I would argue. Actually, the Beatles are remarkable in the sense of they caught just lucky break after lucky break. And a big thing, the question is why the Beatles? And it's just that timing. They're growing in excitement and skill. Their recordings are doing really well in Britain in 1963. The United States, nobody cares about them. Up to this one particular point, and we're coming up on that anniversary, and that's the assassination of John F. Kennedy. And then so there is that aspect to it. Here's these guys making this really happy music, innocent, full of energy, and they just kind of hit the scene, the American scene, right as America is recovering from the assassination and the grief of the assassination. It just kind of grows out of that. The other things, though, that was indeed the age of broadcasting in the true sense, where you had, 3 networks, and if you're living in a major city, you maybe had 3 channels to listen to. It wasn't, you weren't divided up into a gazillion different channels, with all due respect to local channels.
Yes.
But so you had to watch these channels. The Ed Sullivan Show, if you were going to watch TV on that night, that was only one of your 3 choices. And so they're tunneling through that. And then there's the demographic bulge, right? The baby boomers. You hit this peak right in 1964. That's got to play into it too. So there's a number of elements that, we might talk about the perfect storm. This is kind of like that perfect storm. They just hit us at that precise moment. It could have been another band. In another context, it might have been somebody else totally. But just the coincidence of those things, it was the Beatles at the right spot at the right time.
We'll get into your Beatlemore Skidmania event in just a moment. Just another question of that, though, that perfect storm. The Beatles really paved the roadway, the path for other British bands, that British invasion. Even to today, when you look at, I hate to use the word Beatles and One Direction in the same sentence, but a very similar outfit. And what the Beatles did back in the 60s really helped pave the way for young artists today coming out of the British Isles.
Well, and lots of others too.
Yeah.
We Americans didn't care at all about rock and roll or popular music that came from other places, except in kind of like how do we say, novelty things, like the singing nun, right, or these kinds of, or what was the guy that did the Japanese song in the early 1960s? These were kind of novelty items, and there was a place for those, but what really caught the world, caught the United States unawares, was the immensity of the popularity of the Beatles. It shifted that relationship so that suddenly British popular music was acceptable to listen to in the United States. So all of those acts that came out in the 60s, Peter and Gordon, the Animals, the Rolling Stones, the Who, Pink Floyd, it just keeps going. All of that channel that roadway was opened up by the Beatles.
The tip of the hat to the Beatles from all those artists that came afterwards. Beatlemore Skidmania, your event that's happening this Friday and Saturday up at the Zankel Music Center. Tell us what's on tap.
Oh, we've got a great set of performers. Every year what happens is the students, we put out a call, and this year I have a group of about 7 students, and they recruited these performers from campus, student performers. They auditioned them. They put the program together. And it's a complicated process because you want to get a mix of different kinds of performers, but you want the best performers too. There's everything from a rock band to a cello quintet. There are a cappella groups, there are folk duos. There's just this real mix of student performers on this program.
A way for them to interpret the work of the Beatles in their own way.
And we encourage them to come up with their own arrangements. So sometimes you have really novel, interesting, unusual arrangements of tunes, and sometimes they're trying to recreate the original. All of those things are challenges in their own ways.
Yeah, and I guess the grand finale is the thing, obviously always the thing to wait for, but this year it's something special. Well,
this year, what I did this year was that I said to the students, just to make it a little bit more educational too, to force them out of their comfort zone, as I said, everything in the program this year, it has to be from 1963, 50 years, right? So there's 2 albums. There's the Please Please, in the Britain, Please Please Me, and With the Beatles. No albums had been released in the United States in '63, but those 2 British albums, and then there's 4 singles. There's Please Please Me, From Me to You, She Loves You, and I Want to Hold Your Hand, plus the flip sides to those. I said, that's your repertoire, so you need to go for that. Okay. But the finale, in 1963, the Beatles always closed their show with Twist and Shout.
Okay.
Now, it's not a song that Lennon and McCartney wrote, but it's the song that they wanted and chose to be their closer. And so we're going to close with it this year, too. To make it kind of this group presentation, I've got different singers taking verses. And I think there's going to be some other unusual stuff about it as well.
All right, you have to get to the show to see it. Of course, the show also raises some money for a good cause.
Yes, the money that we raise for the Friday night and Saturday afternoon shows All of that goes to an organization on the campus called Skidmore Cares. Skidmore Cares serves as our vehicle to help identify charities and institutions that need support. And it helps Skidmore to connect and helps students to connect and realize that they can have a positive influence on the Saratoga community. So we support, there's a hospice, there's a rape crisis center, there's lunches for homeless kids, there's all sorts of things that I think even a lot of Saratogians don't realize that there are these folks that need our help and support. And the concert has grown to us at the point where we said this is a logical thing we can do. We can help support through Skidmore Cares the Saratoga community, make it a better place.
A lot of good causes out there that really do need the help.
Absolutely.
We appreciate you stopping by. We could talk for, as I'm sure you could, for a lot longer about the
What,
legacy
we're done?
of the Beatles. We're done. Unfortunately, in this television world, your 30-second soundbite is up.
Great. Nice to talk.
Pleased to meet you. From Skidmore College, Professor of Music Gordon Thompson. Thank you so much for stopping by. Now, to check out the Beatlemore Skidmania concert, which takes place this Friday and Saturday at the Arthur Zankel Music Center on the Skidmore College campus, head to our website. It's looktvonline.com. We've posted all the information right there for you.